Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. But you know, Alibis, welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Thursday. The state rested today. Jury will be back at 9 a.m. tomorrow to start the defense case. We'll jump into today's testimony, but first, you know the drill. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, share it with your friends, and you can ring my bell if you want notifications of when I post new content. Music fact of the day. We talked about what was voted the worst song in music history, which was Jefferson Starship, We Built This City. What are the other four in the top five? Number 5, Ice Ice Baby by Vanilla Ice. Number 4, Rollin' by Limp Bizkit. Number 3, Everybody Have Fun Tonight by Wang Chung. Number 2, Achy Breaky Heart by Billy Ray Cyrus. And then we know, number 1, Jefferson Starship. I found an interview that Ashley actually gave to Good Morning America. It aired yesterday. She's never spoken out before then. And she said that she spoke out now for other people because she knows she's not alone in this. And she says there are women all over the country going through hard situations behind closed doors. When talking about possibly going to prison for 25 to life, she said it's a horrible reality. She wouldn't wish this on anyone and says that her daughter has been through so much and she can't imagine how it would affect her if things go poorly at trial. We had a little drama first thing this morning, a couple of issues raised before the judge. It took a while for the jury to get back in. So let's look at what happened. The first part dealt with Doug's daughter, Eva. She's not released from her subpoena, and she was seen being interviewed by a news channel in the hallway of the courthouse when deputies were locking up yesterday. Deputies were informed about this. The state says they had spoken to Eva, and she didn't say anything about the trial. Well, they asked Eva to leave the courtroom. After a few minutes, she comes back in, and the judge has her take the stand. She said she talked about her dad's character and how she felt about all this. They ask about her also posting on TikTok. She's posted 3 times since she testified in the trial. The judge says this is a fishing expedition. And if there's a violation, let's talk about it. Otherwise, we have a jury waiting. I took a look at those 3 TikToks. One was promoting her business. She has a clothing company with artwork she designs. The second was her telling about what jewelry she's wearing. And the third, she was just thanking people for their support. The media liaison was going to meet with the media to again go over the order about media in the courthouse. The judge will make a decision about Eva if she's called to testify again, but she was allowed to stay in the courtroom for the rest of testimony today. After that, they brought the jurors in one by one. The judge said the court was provided a letter from a law firm representing a reporter who wanted to remain anonymous, who said that yesterday during the lunch break, they went to a restaurant and there was a large screen playing coverage and commentary of the trial. Also, 2 people were discussing witness testimony. One man that was recognized as a juror in the case was within earshot of that conversation. I just want to make clear, not participating in that conversation. When they brought the male juror in, he said he was getting his lunch to go. He saw the TV, didn't look, and left immediately and did not eat inside the restaurant. So it was all put to bed and we jumped into testimony. The first witness, Sergeant Brian Keelis, he is a cell phone expert. He went over some text messages between Doug and Ashley. These covered from September 20th up until the day of the shooting, September 27th. Doug's phone was extracted first, and Ashley's took a little time because it had a 6-digit PIN code, and it took a little while for the software to be able to bypass that. A lot of these text messages were just very basic things that show them saying good morning to each other, planning their day. A lot of times, Doug is texting Ashley. He's at the gate of the community she lives in. They're planning lunches. They show a video that Doug sent Ashley of their daughter, and also Doug texting every morning a Bible verse to Ashley. On September 23rd, after he texted her the Bible verse, he says, "Good morning." Got an email from Stephanie. That would be his family court attorney. and she talked to Faith. And it says there's an order to mediate for 1 hour tomorrow to stop court next week. You dismiss injunction, and we sign joint stipulation to dismiss dissolutions and hold until judge signs order for report. That would be that psychiatric report. As soon as she signs the order, we file dismissal and we're done. He put praying hands and a heart emoji. He said, and we have a joint session with Dr. Q to wrap up our adventure in Florida and leave with the understanding of double knots and red blue aversion. Ashley loved the image of the scripture he sent. She says, good morning back. Ashley says, oh, okay. I'll reach out to Faith to follow up and gives a thumbs up emoji. Doug says Stephanie just sent Faith joint dismissal of everything except the injunction, which Faith has to do just one paper. Then he asked what time she's thinking about lunch. She says around 1:30. She said, I'll text when we are headed that way. Doug said he could come pick her up, more time with my baby. Mediation tomorrow by Zoom, 10:30, and be quick. He asked if they should get together the next morning before mediation. He says he thinks they're going to need to keep involved or this could drag out. Ashley says, haha, okay. On the 24th, this is 3 days before the shooting, Doug tells Ashley she can come to his place for the Zoom mediation. She says she could just do it from her phone quick and easy. Doug says, so nice to experience quick and easy, and says she looked great for just rolling off the couch. They talk about how to get their cars from Florida to Maryland. He says it's going to take $900 to ship one, and then he could tow her car or his. Ashley said maybe it's best if he drives the U-Haul and tows his truck. She says mom and the cats will go in the Jeep, and she says she would drive herself and Emerson, their daughter, in the car. Doug says, LOL, the Beverly Hillbillies. That night, Doug reminds Ashley they have that meeting with Dr. Q at 10:30 the next morning. They play a video of Doug, Ashley, Ashley's mom, Alicia, and you can hear their daughter in the background. They're playing a game that me and my kids love to play, especially when we're waiting in line at Disney for some reason. It's called Heads Up. It's a guessing game. You have something that is the right word, and you can say everything but that. That is on my YouTube page if you want to go check that out. All of my links are in the description of this podcast, by the way. On September 25th, 2 days before the shooting, he says Dr. Q is at 10:30 and asked if she wants a chai and a bagel. She said if she does this early, she's done for the day, but says thank you. Later that morning, he asked if she's able to make the appointment with Dr. Q, and she said she would be there in a minute. The day before the shooting, September 26th, they say their good mornings. In the afternoon, he asked if she's ready to start. Ashley says she'll text him in a bit. She asked if he wants to come pick her up and they can go get the truck. Doug says, sure, heading that way. Then later on, he says that he's there. September 27th, the day of the shooting. Doug asks what they're working on, and Ashley says last cram, using the big boxes and getting the last loose stuff packed up and ready. She asked how it's going over there for him and asked if he's making progress. Doug said loose stuff should be a chapter in our book, LOL. Got everything out and in garage, ready to throw on truck, except couch, AKA bed, pretty much emptied. Taking Sully, that's their dog, to get his shots, then to the doggy spa to get groomed, and then stay until ready to go. I'll come there after I drop him off at 3. Ashley responds, great. Could you run by Lowe's before you come to grab a few large and mediums? Doug says, sure, I need a few too. I assume they're talking about boxes. He later says he's headed to the dog spa, and then a little less than an hour later, he texts Ashley he's headed there. At 3:54, he says he's there out front. Ashley says, okay, 1 minute. At 5:10, Doug says he's about to head back, and there's an attachment showing the interior of the U-Haul that he must have been using. It's not very full. He says everything in except couch and 10 medium boxes and 2 cab, LOL. Ashley laughs at the photo and says, oh my gosh. 5:32, Doug says the trucker is on the way. On cross, the defense says he sends scripture, but you can't say that Doug is a very religious guy. Of course, the witness can't. Also, The witness can't tell if the text is genuine from Ashley or motivated by fear. The next witness, Dr. Vega, the medical examiner, he performed the autopsy on Doug the morning of September 28th and found an injury to the right side of his chest, just to the right of the nipple, an injury to the right shoulder, and also the right leg. Doug had abrasions on the back of his head, which coincided with him hitting his head on the wall as he was falling. He located a projectile in the tissue of the left side of Doug's back. The path of the projectile was from the right side. It struck the fifth rib, the right lung, the 10th vertebral body, that's right in the middle of the spine, the left lung, the 10th rib, and stopped at the soft tissue of the back. It was right to left and horizontal. He thinks it went through kind of at an angled point. Now, that injury to the chest wouldn't have been immediately fatal. It could have incapacitated him quickly, but he can't say if it would have been immediate. That right arm, it's a surface wound. It essentially grazed his skin before entering into his chest. That leg wound was to the back of the leg and the calf area. He talks about how you distinguish entry and exit wounds. Entry wounds has a well-defined defect in the skin. The edge of the skin defect might have a ring or an arc of an abrasion or scraping as that bullet passes through. Exit wounds don't. I like the way he breaks this down here. It's a really good way of explaining it. The entry is essentially like drilling a hole. The exit makes the skin kind of tent up. The wound path of the leg injury, it went through the muscles of the calf and fractured the top of the leg bones and then exited on the lower right side of his knee. There was no stippling on the gunshot wounds, so that tells him those shots came from a distance of 3 feet or more. The leg injury path of travel, he said it can be hard to tell because the shooter and Doug's leg could have been in multiple positions. They asked if he could have gotten this while falling. He said the muzzle would have to have been lower and behind the right leg to get that angle of path of travel. Toxicology for Doug was clean. Cause of death, gunshot wound to the chest, perforation of the lungs was the big culprit there, with bleeding into the chest, causing those lungs not to be able to expand. He said right after the gunshot wound, typically you would see rapid bleeding because the lungs are so vascular, which collapses that lung. He ruled the manner of death homicide. On cross, the defense points out Doug's 169 pounds and 5'9". They talk about the hollow point bullet, and the defense says the public perception is that it's more lethal, and asked if those kind of bullets are designed to expand in tissue to prevent them from exiting and harming someone else. The witness says that's part of it. The defense asked that after the chest shot, he could have continued to advance forward for a couple of seconds, and the witness says it's possible. The defense asked if all homicides are crimes. The witness says, in my experience, homicide determined by the medical examiner doesn't necessarily imply criminality. The defense asked for the chest shot. The weapon would have been pointed to his chest from the front. He says yes here, but redirect, they're going to bring that back in. Defense says the gun would have to be lower than the leg to get that upward trajectory. The medical examiner said that lower is a relative term. Your legs can be in various positions. The defense asked if Doug fell backwards and his legs went up in the air. Might that leg injury be consistent with that? The witness says it's possible. On redirect, the state points out that the defense talks about the gun would have had to have been pointed at him from the front, but they point out it entered through the side. Then the witness says that the projectile had to be coming from Doug's right side. So, what the state's doing is discrediting the defense's position that Ashley shot him from the front as he's advancing. This witness just admitted it would have been from the side. With the leg wound, the medical examiner said, really, without something to fall back over, it seems really unlikely that Doug's legs would go that high up for that kind of an angle of a gunshot wound. And that was it for the medical examiner. The last witness of the day, Daniel Hostorf. He is with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Essentially, he's a gun expert. I'm not going to get too deep into his testimony. He just talks about the mechanics of the gun and what's what. He explains that a semi automatic pistol, there's one shot. Every time you pull the trigger, then once the casing is ejected, it auto loads another projectile after firing. He brings the firearm out and explains each component. They talk about that live round that was in the chamber. He says that's possible if the extractor is tight. He mentioned something about springs. He personally did not have an issue when he test fired. He confirms there was no gunpowder on the clothes, which again confirms a distance between Ashley and Doug. After this point, the state rested. Now, the defense says they hope to be finished by Tuesday, but that could be challenging. Also, there is a witness that will testify for the defense, but that person is not under subpoena and they have watched some of the proceedings. So they're going to have to question this potential witness to see her exposure. The last thing before I started this episode is, of course, the defense asked for an acquittal and the judge denied that. So that's it. We're going to be winding down. It looks like maybe we could get to closings as early as Wednesday. We'll see what the defense puts up. It sounds like maybe the defense has plenty of witnesses lined up for their case. So I'm very interested to see who they're going to call and what they're going to say. But that's it. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening. We will see you soon.